You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
I want to start with a quote today. My ego is my enemy, and my opponent is my teacher. That's a quote relates to martial arts, but it also applies to business. We're going to talk a little bit about martial arts and business and a whole lot of interesting things today. Joining us today is Lisa Dell'Alba. She is CEO of Square One Markets, which is a family-owned business in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us today, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
So I called you CEO. You're president and CEO, so sorry about that. But let's start out. Just give us an overview of Square One, how it started and where it is now.
Okay, so we are a 7-store chain, convenience and gas, in the northeast of Pennsylvania, so about an hour north of Philadelphia. The chain was started by my father in the year 2000. Prior to that, he was an auto mechanic, and he owned a triple bay service station in Bethlehem. Loved working on cars, self-taught. And what he found was that as cars started to get a little bit more electronically savvy, he kind of trended away from that and started selling fuel. And then a couple of years later, he got into the convenience store business through a major oil partner. And then in 2000, he bought a chain of convenience stores and became Square One Markets.
And how did you get involved?
Yeah.
How did I get involved? Well, funny thing is I never saw myself in the family business. And it was a little bit more along the lines of family dynamics more than anything. I was, the kid that I think probably gave my dad some gray hair earlier in his life than he should have. So, I actually went to college for dance and psychology. And I started working in human services. And my father and I were talking one day, and I was trying to give him some ideas of things he could do with his managers in terms of team development and, just different ideas in the store. And he said, why don't you just come and work with me and do it for me? And, we probably spent a few months meeting over the what ifs. What if we don't get along? What if I fire you? Which he actually did at one point. And it was probably one of the scariest decisions and most exciting decisions I ever made in my life. So I quit my job, and my first day of work was January 2nd of 2004, if I remember correctly. And I started my work day meeting my father at my parents' house, and we had business. We had breakfast, and the rest is history. So I spent 5 years working with him and really understanding his vision and what was important to him. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2009. So that's when I became the president of Square One.
I'm doing some quick math in my head. So Jeff and I have both been at NACS about as long. Well, Jeff definitely but as long as you guys have been in business. Yeah. So how did you get involved with NACS? A lot of people say they went to their first NACS show and that was pretty much it. Was that what it was like for you?
Yeah. And I think my father was trying to come up with tasks for me to do initially. And he said, we really should be going to the NACS show. It's something we've always wanted to do. And he's like, get us set up and let's go. And so my first NACS show was in 2004. And I have not missed a show since.
And you are super engaged in NACS. You're on not just the NACS Board of Directors, you're on the NACS Executive Committee. You lead the Leg Committee, I believe now, the Legislative Committee. So super engaged. You also bring in a lot of other smaller operators into your circle, if you will, or maybe they bring you into their circle. But just like there are study groups for mid-sized operators, there's this connection that these smaller operators have. How can you describe that for some of the folks out there that may just say, hey, you know what, it's really tough. I feel like I have to solve everything on my own. And there are solutions. Some of them are NACS. Some of them are just these informal share groups that you guys have.
Yeah, and it's through NACS that I have met some really good friends, people that I would consider, great friends, not just in the industry, but just in general. And it was through events and just kind of sitting next to each other at things that really started a friendship that, we have a chat group where we will talk about toilet paper dispensers and, hey, this happened. How have you handled this? And it's extremely valuable. And, if anybody wants to join us, please do so, because it is, it does feel at times like you're alone, especially as a small operator. You wear so many hats. I was going to make a joke when you talked about my job title, because it really depends on the day. Today I was a little bit of the maintenance person, and that seems to be a hat I wear often lately. But it's helpful, especially in the environment we're in right now, to just know that there are other people dealing with what you deal with, and really some people that give some wonderful ideas, just things that you don't always get to see because you're not looking at the situation in the same way that they are, and it's extremely valuable to me.
And you had mentioned dance and psychology is your background.
Yes.
And my background is engineering, and I have not engineered, if that's even a word, something in many decades. Instead, I'm in communications. So life finds you in some strange places. But I want to instead go to that quote that we started off the show with, because you evolved from dance to getting into the martial arts, and there were some really cool things that was in the January issue of the NACS magazine, an interview with you, and it focused on your activity with martial arts. So can you tell us a little bit about how that plays out in terms of your personal life and your business life? And we'll start with that first quote: "My ego is my enemy and my opponent is my teacher."
Well, I didn't. You really you did your research. First of all, that is a quote that is used very often. I can't tell you which Gracie it is, because I think the Gracie family might be bigger than the Sheets family. There are a lot of Gracies, and they're all very involved in teaching this particular form of self-defense. I think similarly to you talked about how our backgrounds are different, and here we are in the convenience industry, and I truly believe the convenience store industry finds you. Kind of similarly to the way martial arts found me. So I was a parent. I enrolled my son, who was 5 at the time, in a mixed martial arts program, and he was a mess. He was getting kicked out of class, turning off the lights, everything. And I think he was about ready to get kicked out. And there was an adult class, and I, decided, okay, he thinks that he's one of us. He's an only child. Let's take this class. We'll just kind of stick around for white belt. Which would have been a couple months, and, demonstrate the way we take class. And hopefully he'll take, pieces of that and kind of get a better head on his shoulders. So 6 years later, I found myself testing for my first degree black belt in mixed martial arts. And it was something that I never saw myself doing, very similarly to the way that I entered the convenience store industry. It was just something that I kind of put my ego aside, if you will, my embarrassment of being a parent on the mat and learning something brand new. I think when you really look at what it teaches you, and especially, from there, I kind of started to get a little bit more serious about jujitsu. And, aside from being in an actual fight, which I hope I never find myself in, when you are sparring with an opponent, they are teaching you. It is their job to coach you, especially if they're a higher belt. So most of my partners are black belts. And, they could end the match in 5 seconds if they wanted to, and they have. But, they are there to help you. And so, you find yourself stuck, and you can stop and say, hey, how I can't see a way out of this. What can I do? And they help you. And so, when I think about the analogy to our industry and things like NACS and NACS events and the friends that I've made through those events, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as our chat group where we talk about, where are you buying your toilet paper from? It's very similar, is that, we may be competing against each other. I mean, we have some very strong competitors in the Northeast. They are very engaged with NACS, and I can sit down and have conversations with them about certain things that are going on in the industry. And I think that came to light during the pandemic, when we were all kind of looking for, how are we handling this? Or are you staying open? Or are you changing your hours? We really became, even though we were technically opponents on the street at times, we really became kind of, allies to each other, and really taught each other how to navigate something that was very challenging, and something that similarly in jiu-jitsu, sometimes you just don't see your way out. And so, when you've got other people looking at the problem from a different angle, it's very helpful to just kind of move forward. So,
there's always a solution, right?
Yeah. And, to the ego part, I mean, when you're talking about, being a middle-aged female on the mat with, most of the time I'm the only female in the class, and everybody's bigger than me. So, it's very analogous to, some of these big players that are out there that we're competing against every day is I can't have an ego.
Right.
It plays back into some of the things where, you can't always do what you always did. And sometimes it's really hard to say, hey, my dad made this decision 20 years ago, but it's no longer applicable today. And sometimes those things are really hard because there's a lot of family pride there. There's ego. And it is your enemy at times because you don't always get to see the opportunities that you have for people to kind of help you through those challenging times.
I think we were even more intrigued by this thoughtful quote that we saw in the January issue of the NACS magazine. In jiu-jitsu, you have to think in 3D. And there are times on the mat when you realize moving forward is the worst place to put yourself in. Now, that quote wasn't from the family that's involved in martial arts. It was from you. And it struck us as there's a real vulnerability there in admitting, and we hear that a lot in these leadership meetings, you need to show vulnerability. But, it used to be the old mindset was like, you got to go forward, you go. And that quote really resonated, I think, with a lot of people who read it.
Yeah, so when you think about sitting across from your opponent on the mat and a match starts, you high five and then you start. And I think, your instinct is to keep pushing forward. And if your opponent knows what they're doing, they're not going to let you do that. And, I hope none of my instructors are listening to this because I'm still very green. I'm a very new blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I couldn't be happier about being a beginner in something again in life because that's just my motto. But, a lot of times we just keep pushing forward and we keep, trying to do things over and over again the same way. And it's very obvious at times that that's not the best way to go. Sometimes you have to back out to go around or, it's something sometimes you have to retrace our steps. And I think we found ourselves doing that a lot over the last few years in terms of what are the basics. And, I was in class last night and my instructor said, one of the Gracies, and I apologize for not knowing who it was, but, his whole belief, and this gentleman, won tournament after tournament, but he said, get good at 10 things. You don't have to be good at the 800 tactics that are out there. Get really good at 10 things, from each position that you can either get out of or beat your opponent. And, when you think about the convenience store industry, the expectations of our customer are still the same. They want friendly faces. They want clean places. They want a variety, to choose from when they're shopping, and they want to feel safe and they want to go about their day. And so, for us, I think we've really had to kind of retrench and think about what are the basic needs and what are those 10 things that we can be really good at? Because to try to be good at everything as a small operator is really challenging. We don't have the budget. Sometimes we just don't have the technology. Sometimes it's the expertise. If it wasn't for my friends that have expertise in areas that I don't, it would be even worse. But, what are those things that we're really good at? And what are those things that we're not going to try to tackle yet? I think that's really, really important as a small operator because we see these, these 300-pound, competitors out there that just do everything well. And while it's very aspirational to try to be that, I think it's really important to know who you are and know what your skills are. So I know as a jiu-jitsu practitioner that even if I got really good, I'm not going to be able to squash an opponent that's 260 pounds. And sometimes they are. So, I know that there are other things that I need to think about. I need to think about my size. I need to think about what my technical skills are, and I need to really hone those in.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for everybody, right? Like, you don't always have to stay in your own lane. And I think, within this industry, there's room for everybody to bring something new to the table. And that's what, honestly makes it unique. And, what you said about, sometimes they're bigger, they're stronger. Sometimes they have 200 stores and 300 stores and someone has, 1 or 7.
Right.
But for that customer who walks in your doors, I mean, if you're offering exactly what they want, that's all that matters.
Yeah, Lisa, you're a quote machine in addition to the one that was in the January magazine. We've talked at various meetings, and you had a compelling question at a meeting that we had earlier this year, and it was, are we easy to do business with? And are our definitions of convenience the same as our customers? And I think that question ties into what you were just talking about. It's like, what 10 things are we doing well? And then the second part of that, does it line up with what they want us to do well at? And how do you look at those elements?
I think one of the reasons, because everyone always asks me, where did square one come from? And it's a battle that I have fought in my head for a number of years, because that was something that was very important to my father. And he felt, even in the year 2000, that, and I agree and I disagree with this, but that he felt as though convenience stores were becoming inconvenience stores in a way. And he said, let's be really good at the basics. Let's take it back to square one. Let's do the things that we know we're really good at, engaging with our neighborhood customers, offering clean and safe places. And I don't think that's changed. And I do often wonder, sometimes the simplest things are the things that people appreciate the most. And at the end of the day, when you think about convenience, what we're trading in is still time. And even though we have, fancy food service offerings or apps or ways to connect with our customers outside of the transactional counter, I do often wonder sometimes if we're really thinking about the customer. And I think about what I want a lot, and I don't always know that lines up with everyone else, but I just want to get my stuff and I want to go. And, it's really cool if the person behind the counter knows who I am and knows what I want before I walk in the door. And that's always been so important to me. And, again, just some of those basics is I ask everybody behind our counter when I see that happening, when somebody's coming in and they're already grabbing the product from behind the counter that they know they want. I said, if we know what they're consuming, do we know their name? And that goes a long way. If I know that Jeff is coming in my store and I know what he wants from behind the counter, or I know that he's going to grab a Pepsi, I should know who he is. I should know his name. I should be able to greet him when hey, Jeff. And those things are so simple and basic. And I think we're, as a society, really trending away from face-to-face interaction. And I think the pandemic really escalated that. And so at the end of the day, though, I think people still appreciate those very small things. And so, when you think about the things that you're adding to your business or the changes you're making, I still think making it simple is the easiest thing to do. And sometimes that's really hard, because I think we build things to make things simple, and sometimes they're anything but. But, I do think that you have to think about that customer, and you have to think about the person behind your counter. Because, I think we've made jobs very complex at times for people, when really a hello, Jeff, is really all it takes sometimes to make people happy and let them get on their way.
Wow, I got to get a loyalty card. You're treating me really nice. So, talking about the interpersonal relationships, both behind the counter and with the customer, you say that on your website. You're crazy about convenience customers. You're nuts about your employees. How do you show that? Is there a way that you try to stand out in the square one way? You don't have to give away all your secrets, but are there a couple things that just kind of made you think okay, this is how we can be different, and no one can match us on this. This makes us unique.
Well, I've always been very proud of our drive-through. We've operated a drive-through for over 30 years. It was an idea that, my father had, that I think we all looked at him like he was nuts for, and I've given away a lot of my drive-through secrets, but, we're small enough that I think we can really personally engage with people. I love standing behind our counter, and, I think people love to joke like, oh, do you know how to run that register? And, oh, we've got the order today, and it just, and a lot of times if people don't know me, I like just to pretend like I'm new and engage with our folks. And I think being small allows us to do that. And, we can help individuals with problems that they're having, and really get to know what people are about. I think that's become a little challenging lately. I think, people are, the job market has changed tremendously, and people are looking for purpose and passion. And that's not always easy to show that our job can offer those things, because you really have to like people, and you have to like cranky people too. And that's a mission that I try to, push forward is, everybody always complains about that guy. I hope it's not Jeff. But, and I always try to say what can you do to make that person happy? And he wouldn't mind me using him as an example, but, we have a gentleman, his name is Reggie, and he's been coming into our Bethlehem store for years. And I ran into him out at a local restaurant, and he came up to me and just read me the riot act about a new team member that we had that didn't know how to run the lottery machine. And he was so angry. So I bought him a drink, and him and I are best friends. And he comes in, he's one of the most loyal customers we've ever had, and, speaks so highly of our company, and now is one of the kindest people to new people behind that lottery machine that you could possibly. And, if we weren't small, I don't know that would be as easy. And so, I really think I go out of my way to make sure that people are happy if they're grumpy. And I really like to make sure that our folks have the same goal in mind, because, life is hard right now. And, if you can walk into a store and have a positive transaction, that can change somebody's day.
Yeah, we saw that when we did these focus groups a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, and we interviewed some folks who previously had worked in jobs, wrote about it in NACS magazine. Chrissy did a couple of years ago, and one of the things that stood out is somebody who said, "I have unbelievable power to change somebody's frown to a smile in a matter of seconds." Didn't say the opposite. Didn't say I have the power to change somebody's smile to a frown. Thank goodness.
Make them miserable.
Right. But it's amazing the power that you have and the pay it forward moment that it can be if you're working the register or working in a store. And we interact with about half of the U.S. every day. So pretty powerful what we could, and that's true around the world too, but pretty powerful if we all can change somebody's frown to a smile.
It only takes one person. I think if you can change somebody's day, I can't think of a better satisfaction walking away from a work day. If you know that, even in that 3 seconds, that could be the most positive interaction that person has all day. And, we went through a period of time where we told all of our folks, in the industry and in many other industries like ours, that they were essential. And, we had an essential designation. And I think we are even more essential now behind that counter. I've gone to some of my competitors, in the area, in other areas, stores that are not in my area, but we're trying so hard to eliminate face-to-face interaction. And I don't know if I like it, because sometimes just having a kooky interaction with, somebody for 30 seconds about something that's funny or, a new product can really it can just change your whole vibe. I hope we don't lose that face-to-face permanently and just totally. I see McDonald's is automizing, everything, or automating, sorry. And, I think that's a mistake, because, interacting with the kids in the drive, my son and I go to McDonald's, after karate every Monday. And, I see the same kids in the drive-thru, and it's, hey, it's you again, But, I think it's important. And, I think we have to be careful how many layers we put in that interaction, because it's just, I think we're more essential than we've ever been.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, to our industry's benefit, other industries that have gone before us have showed that technology is sometimes slower and isn't as smooth as if you had just gotten in line and gone through, the process like you normally would. So maybe people are trained a little bit to say it might be there, but it might not be the better option all the time, unless you really, truly are in a hurry.
That's true. I mean, yes, there's definitely some merit to, people who just don't want to talk to anyone. And I'm like that. There's some days where I don't want to, but those are also the days where, when you do interact with somebody, it really does mean something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely the days when I'm not looking my best or feeling my best, I will pick self-checkout every single time. I'll just save someone the hassle. You don't even need to try. I'll just smile and go my way.
But in saying that, with self-checkout, is maybe you didn't interact at the checkout counter, but was there somebody as you were shopping the aisles that, just smiled and said, hey,
right,
thank you for shopping at, so-and-so. It doesn't have to necessarily be the same way it's always been in our industry. Even if it's somebody that just opens the door for you and says, welcome to Square One Markets, I think it's something that we need to keep making sure is part of that interaction.
Yeah. And I think outside of our channel, Publix is probably the best at exactly what you just described. I've never been in a Publix store where at least 2 or 3 employees didn't ask me if I found everything I needed. And sometimes I didn't. And a guy walked me, 6 aisles away to help me find what I needed to find. It was like a needle in a haystack. So there's definitely some good, examples out there of how to do that.
Well, have a couple free marketing slogans for you. We go to the mat for you. We're willing to get beat up over you.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you want to focus group those. But Lisa, that was really provocative stuff. And I think you probably have a couple people that are going to sign up for jiu-jitsu now. And thank you for joining us today.
Okay, they can sign up for it, but then we got to follow up and see if they stuck with it.
Yes. And we got to see if we get like a 5% commission on it.
Exactly.
You have to be willing to play the long game in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. 10 years to get your black belt. And Jeff, if I would have known that engaging in combat sports would have gotten me on your show, I would have done it sooner because I've been dying to sit down and talk with you guys. And so thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you once again. And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.